People will complain about anything: sunlight, gravity, even the existence of other humans, like the universe personally inconvenienced them. And if you think that's the peak of travel stupidity, buckle up. We're only grazing the warm-up round of absurdity. 1. A tourist once complained that the ocean didn't match the photos, as if nature owed them a filter pack. I watched this person march to the front desk, holding their phone like a courtroom exhibit, insisting the water was too teal instead of the proper tropical blue advertised. They spoke with the confidence of someone returning a broken blender, except the blender was the Atlantic Ocean. They demanded the staff fix the color tone, preferably before sunset, because they had aesthetic goals. The employee tried explaining tides, weather, and basic reality, but the tourist wasn't having it. They left a 1-star review claiming the beach was dishonest. Yes, the beach. Imagine hating the shoreline for false advertising. That's the kind of complaint that makes you stare into the sea and wonder how we ever survived as a species. 2. A couple stormed into the visitor center furious that a wild moose refused to come closer for photos. You know, the 900-pound animal built like a furry SUV with antlers. They said the moose was uncooperative and not participating in the experience, as if the park secretly pays these creatures by the hour. They demanded to know why the moose ignored them when they tried calling it over like a dog named Baxter. The ranger gently reminded them that moose are unpredictable and, shockingly, do not take direction from strangers holding frappuccinos. Their response? Well, then someone should train them better. Because yes, nothing says tourism like attempting to give customer service notes to an animal that can end your life in 2 kicks. 3. A man on a guided hike complained that mountains shouldn't be so uphill. He said this with a straight face, wiping sweat like gravity had personally insulted him. According to him, the incline was unnecessary and poorly planned, as if the landscape committee forgot to install escalators during creation. He suggested the park consider leveling parts of the terrain for future generations who aren't athletes. The guide tried explaining that mountains, by definition, go up, but the man refused to accept this limiting belief. He grumbled the whole way back down, announcing that he preferred the mountains at Disney. They're way more reasonable. And honestly, if I had the emotional resilience of plastic animatronics, I'd prefer them too. 4. At a perfectly normal, objectively beautiful waterfall, a guest complained that the water was too loud and aggressively wet. They said it sounded angry, like the waterfall had unresolved issues. The staff, bless their souls, tried maintaining eye contact while explaining physics, acoustics, and the radical concept of falling water. The tourist insisted the waterfall should be calmer, because vacations are supposed to be relaxing. They even asked if the park could turn it down a little, the way you lower the volume on a neighbor's bad music. They walked away disappointed, muttering that the waterfall needed better customer service. Somewhere, Mother Nature added them to her block list. 5. During a glass-bottom boat tour, a passenger complained that the fish weren't colorful enough. She said they looked washed out, like someone forgot to color correct the ocean. She wanted the bright tropical ones, even though the region is known for, brace yourself, normal fish. When the guide explained that this is, in fact, how wildlife looks, she pouted and said the company should import better fish to enhance the experience. Yes, import new fish, like restocking a salad bar. She ended the day declaring the ocean was mid-tier and needed more personality. I'm sure the fish were devastated. 6. A tourist once demanded a full refund after discovering that the Northern Lights didn't appear on command. They showed up in midsummer, when the sun barely even sets, and complained that the sky was malfunctioning. They accused the tour company of lighting fraud and demanded to speak to someone higher up, presumably meaning the sun. The guide explained seasonal light cycles, solar activity, and the existence of calendars, but the guests dismissed it all as excuses. They insisted the company should schedule the aurora for the evening, and if that wasn't possible, they should at least simulate it with a projector. Because nothing screams nature's majesty like discount laser lights from Party City. 7. A family staying at a seaside hotel filed an official complaint because the ocean kept moving. They said waves were distracting and inconsistent, and they wanted the resort to stabilize the water. Staff tried explaining how tides work, but the family just nodded politely like they were listening to a man explain his NFT portfolio. confused, unimpressed, and slightly offended. They insisted the resort freeze the water during peak swim hours. When told this was impossible, they left a review stating the beach lacked professionalism. In their defense, the ocean really should get its act together. 8. Someone once demanded a refund because the rainforest was too humid. They said they expected natural air conditioning, as if the jungle forgot to pay its climate control bill. They complained their hair frizzed, their shirt clung to their back, and the air felt sticky. The guide reminded them they were literally inside a rainforest. You know, rain, moisture, plant life thriving because of humidity. The tourist responded, "Well, they should have mentioned that in the name. Sir, what did you think the rain part meant? Free Evian mist?" 9. A woman in Greece complained that the ruins looked too ruined. She said she expected them to be reconstructed for authenticity, which is a sentence that instantly tells you she went on vacation but left her brain in airplane mode. She also asked if the ruins were still under warranty because they seem poorly maintained. The guide explained they were thousands of years old. Her answer? Okay, but they could still fix them up for tourists. That's right, thousands of years of history, undone because Karen wanted a fresher aesthetic. 10. In Iceland, a man became enraged that the geothermal lagoon smelled like eggs. You know, sulfur water. The thing Iceland is literally famous for. He said the water had a vibe issue and needed better fragrance management. Staff explained the sulfur was natural. He said, "Well, nature should stop doing that." Yes, let's file a complaint with volcanoes. Maybe they'll switch to lavender. 11. On a safari tour, a guest complained that the lions looked tired. They asked if the staff could pep them up, maybe by giving them a snack or clapping loudly to make them more active for photos. The guide informed them that startling apex predators is generally frowned upon unless you enjoy the sensation of being a chew toy. The tourist insisted the lions were unprofessional, as if the animals were running late for their shift at Jungle Starbucks. Wildlife, apparently, needs stronger work ethic. 12. A visitor at a scenic viewpoint complained that the mountains blocked the sunset. They said the landscape should be rearranged so the sun could drop straight into the ocean like it does on Instagram. The ranger tried explaining that the mountains were, well, mountains. Immovable, timeless, gigantic. The tourist responded, "Well, maybe you should build an overlook on the other side next time. Yes, let's move several million tons of rock because you want a better wallpaper for your phone. Absolutely." 13. A guest on a tropical island complained that the coconuts didn't fall on schedule. They wanted to witness one drop for the experience, preferably within the hour. The staff warned that falling coconuts can literally kill people. The tourist waved this off, claiming they weren't asking for drama, just ambiance. They waited under a palm tree for 20 minutes before complaining the coconuts were lazy. That's when the staff gently escorted them to safety, because natural selection was getting ideas. 14. A man in Paris filed a complaint because the Eiffel Tower was too tall and made him dizzy just looking at it. He suggested the city consider making a more reasonable version for sensitive people, like a smaller, friendlier Eiffel Tower. He thought landmarks should come in different sizes, like t-shirts. The guide reminded him it has been the same size for over a century. He said, "Well, maybe they should modernize." The tower disagreed by continuing to exist at full height. 15. Someone once demanded a refund on a snorkeling excursion because the fish didn't interact with them. They expected Nemo-level eye contact and maybe a handshake. When the fish swam away, which is what fish do, the tourist told the guide the animals were standoffish. They suggested the company train them to be friendlier, or like restaurant staff. The guide smiled politely, which I assume took Olympic-level restraint. 16. A guest at a historic castle complained that the medieval staircase was too narrow, calling it a safety hazard for modern thighs. They wanted the castle updated to meet contemporary comfort standards, ideally with wider steps, better lighting, and maybe a handrail that doesn't feel so medieval. The staff explained the structure is several centuries old. The tourist said, "Okay, but accessibility matters." True, yet somehow I doubt knights designed their fortresses with stroller-friendly ramps in mind. 17. And my personal favorite, a man complained to a tropical resort that the palm trees were too tall, creating threatening shadows. He claimed the trees felt menacing and asked staff if they could be trimmed to a friendlier height. When staff said no, because they are actual trees, the man replied, "Well, you could at least warn people. They don't look this big online." Sir, if the concept of tall trees is frightening, maybe the outdoors is not for you. 18. A man on a desert tour once complained that the sand was too dusty, as if the Sahara were supposed to vacuum itself before guests arrived. He kept coughing dramatically, insisting the sand was lower quality than he expected, like someone swapped premium artisanal grains for store-brand dryness. He asked the guide if they could hose the place down so it would feel more finished, because nothing says desert experience like mud. When told that sand is, in fact, dusty by nature, he sighed like he'd just discovered a major manufacturing flaw. He ended the tour saying the desert felt unprofessional, which is impressive, considering it's been doing its job for several million years without caring about his Yelp standards. 19. A woman visiting a famous cliffside lookout complained that the wind was too windy and demanded the employees make it stop. She kept clutching her sun hat like she was in a dramatic perfume commercial, scolding the atmosphere itself. According to her, a national landmark should provide controlled breezes, ideally a light, Instagram-friendly gust that gently lifts your hair without reminding you that Earth rotates. The ranger, maintaining saint-level patience, explained that cliffs tend to be breezy because air moves, like it does everywhere. She huffed that the wind felt personal, which honestly might be the first time meteorology has been accused of bullying. 20. A tourist at a volcano viewpoint complained that the lava wasn't as orange as advertised. He held up his brochure like a lawyer presenting evidence and said the real thing looked kinda dull, as if molten rock was failing at its one job, being aesthetically pleasing. He suggested the park consider enhancing the color or adjusting the brightness, because he apparently thinks volcanoes come with a settings menu. When the guide explained that atmospheric conditions affect visibility, he responded, "Well, they should fix that. Yes, man with cargo shorts and a disposable camera. Let's patch the Earth's mantle." 21. Someone on a glacier tour complained that the ice was too slippery. They seemed genuinely betrayed, staring at their guide like the glacier had violated a contract. They said they expected safer ice, a phrase that lives permanently rent-free in my brain. When told that ice tends to be slippery, their eyes narrowed like they'd discovered a conspiracy. Then why bring people here? They asked, as if the tour company could personally override friction. They suggested putting down mats or carpeting, transforming a geological wonder into the world's saddest hallway. 22. A beach resort guest once demanded compensation because the ocean tasted too salty. They said they expected it to taste fresh, like the water at home, because apparently the earth should flavor itself according to their palate. They accused the resort of poor maintenance, as if someone forgot to rinse the ocean overnight. The employee tried explaining that saltwater is, well, saltwater, but the guest just frowned like they'd been scammed by Poseidon. They insisted the resort should fix the recipe, which is honestly the boldest culinary suggestion ever directed at a planet. 23. A tourist visiting a famous canyon complained it was too open and made them uncomfortable. They said it felt like too much space, as if the landscape were committing a personal boundary violation. They preferred cozier canyons, ideally something more enclosed with less dramatic emptiness. The ranger explained that canyons tend to be large and open because erosion likes doing whatever it wants. The tourist nodded like they understood, then said, "Well, maybe build a fence around the edge so it feels more contained." Yes, nothing captures the majesty of nature like putting it in a big playpen. 24. A man on a whale-watching tour demanded a refund because the whales didn't surface close enough to him specifically. He said he'd paid for an immersive experience, which apparently means he expected a 40-ton animal to pop up like an overenthusiastic Labrador. When informed that whales are wild animals and not Disney animatronics, he rolled his eyes and muttered that the company should train them better. This is the same kind of energy as yelling at a passing airplane for not waving back. The whales, by the way, continued being whales, blissfully unaware of his disappointment. 25. Someone on a hot air balloon ride complained that the balloon went too high. They asked if it could hover closer to the ground, like a confused elevator that refuses to leave the lobby. The pilot explained that balloons rise because hot air rises, which is sort of the entire concept. The tourists shook their head and said, "Well, I didn't think it'd be this high. This is the same energy as going to a pool and complaining there's water." They spent the rest of the flight clinging to the basket like a Victorian widow on a ship railing, whispering that the sky felt hostile. 26. A visitor at a famous cave system complained it was too dark. He wanted the cave bright enough to see all the details, but also not bright enough to ruin the mood, basically requesting a geological dimmer switch. He asked why the cave didn't have skylights, and the guide had to explain, very slowly, that caves are underground. He nodded thoughtfully, then said, "Still, they could install some windows. I would pay actual money to see a window salesman try to pitch a granite wall." 27. A tourist in a tropical country complained that the jungle had too many bugs. They said they expected some insects, but not actual insects, which is a sentence I'm still trying to decipher. They asked staff why the jungle wasn't more sanitized, like someone forgot to use a pressure washer on millions of acres of biodiversity. The guide gently reminded them that bugs are part of the ecosystem. They replied, "Well, they should clean it better for guests. If arrogance had a national park, this person would be the mascot." 28. A man who signed up for a sunrise hike complained that the sun took too long to come up. He said the wait time was unacceptable, as if the universe should expedite the rotation of the Earth for his convenience. He checked his watch repeatedly, sighed loudly, and complained about the poor time management. When the sun finally appeared, he muttered that it ruined the surprise by being predictable. Honestly, I wish I were kidding. If someone ever sues astronomy for being repetitive, it'll be him. 29. A woman visiting a famous Red Rock Canyon complained that the rocks were too red. She claimed they clashed with her outfit and made her look washed out in photos. She asked if there was an overlook with more neutral tones, ideally something beige or muted. The ranger informed her that the canyon has looked like this for millions of years. She responded, "Well, that's not very flexible." The fact that she expected geology to color match her Instagram grid will never stop being iconic. 30. A guest at a mountains. Lodge insisted their view was too mountainy. They said they expected something more open, which is fascinating because they booked a room labeled Mountain Panorama. They asked if the lodge could trim the peaks a little, like mountains are just big, inconvenient hedges. When the staff explained that mountains are not, in fact, trimmable, the guest sighed and said they preferred flat landscapes. Which begs the question, why did you choose the Alps, Trevor? Why? 31. On a tropical island tour, someone complained that the sun was too bright and should be turned down. They gestured at the sky like complaining to a manager, demanding a shade level better suited for tourism. The guide explained that sunglasses exist. The tourist said sunglasses shouldn't be necessary. I'm amazed they didn't ask for an umbrella the size of the solar system. If entitlement could eclipse the sun, this person would blot out half the hemisphere. 32. A woman at a famous lake complained that the water was too reflective. She said it made her feel self-conscious, as if the lake personally insulted her by accurately reflecting light. She wanted staff to matte the surface, maybe with some kind of coating to reduce shininess. The ranger, likely questioning every career choice that led to this moment, reminded her that water reflects things. She responded, "Well, it shouldn't reflect me." Honestly? Same, but still, no. 33. A visitor on a heritage tour complained that the historic village looked outdated. He expected the 1800s settlement to feel more modern, perhaps with updated signage and better architecture. The guide had to explain that history tends to look old because it is old. He insisted they should freshen it up, so tourists don't feel stuck in the past. That is, of course, the entire point. But something tells me this man also microwaves Pop-Tarts and calls it innovative cuisine. 34. At a cliffside ocean view, a tourist once complained that the sea spray got their face wet. They said it was rude of the ocean to intrude on their personal space, as if water traveling through the air should observe human boundaries. They asked if the staff could reposition the ocean breeze so it wouldn't hit them directly. The employee explained that wind and waves can't be rotated like a desk fan. The tourist sniffed and said, "Then someone should design a better system." Yes, a better system than the planet. Excellent idea. 35. A tourist once complained that the rainforest was too green, and I swear I felt my soul briefly leave my body. They stood in the middle of the most biodiverse ecosystem on Earth, surrounded by plants that have survived millions of years, and declared the color scheme monotonous. They said the forest needed more variety, maybe some purples or blues, like nature should follow a Pinterest palette. The guide kindly explained that plants are green because they contain chlorophyll. The tourist blinked slowly and said, well, they should consider alternatives. Alternatives to the fundamental basis of photosynthesis. Imagine writing a complaint to evolution because it didn't coordinate with your outfit. Even the toucans looked offended. 36. At a world-famous cliffside monastery, someone complained that the monks didn't smile enough. They expected monastic life to resemble a Disney parade, complete with cheerful waving and maybe a choreographed chant. When informed the monks had taken vows of silence, the tourist dramatically sighed and said, "That's not very welcoming." They tried to peek behind a wooden gate to see if the monks were at least having fun, because nothing says spiritual respect like treating a monastery like a zoo enclosure. They left a review saying the monks were low energy. Honestly, if centuries of quiet contemplation could be ruined by one disappointed tourist, humanity would have ended a long time ago. 37. A visitor in Norway complained that the fjords were too cold, which is an incredible observation given the fjords are in Norway. They gestured angrily at the sky and said the government should warm things up for tourism. The guide explained that temperatures are dictated by latitude, climate, and seasons. The tourist nodded gravely and responded, "Well, that sounds like a policy issue." They later complained that the snow wasn't the right kind of fluffy, as if the country intentionally bought the wrong model. Somewhere in Oslo, a meteorologist sneezed without knowing they were being blamed for winter. 38. On a gondola ride in Venice, a couple complained that the canals smelled like water and they expected something more romantic. The gondolier, who probably deals with this weekly, explained that canals have tides, algae, and, shockingly, aquatic smells. They frowned and asked if Venice could use scented oils, like they wanted the world's oldest city to function as a giant diffuser. The woman said she pictured the water smelling like roses, or at least something high-end. Yes, nothing screams history and culture like spritzing a UNESCO World Heritage Site with Febreze. The pigeons would revolt. 39. A guest visiting Stonehenge complained the stones were too plain. They expected them to be shinier or more mystical, like someone should have installed dramatic LEDs for ambiance. They asked if the site was going to get upgraded, perhaps with carvings, gold trim, or at least a plaque explaining what it really means. The guide explained that its mystery is part of its significance. No one truly knows the full purpose. The tourist nodded slowly and said, "Well, someone should decide," as though a 5,000-year-old archaeological mystery just needed a firm project manager. Maybe slap a QR code on the trillathons and call it a day. 40. A person on a desert camel tour complained that the camel walked like it had no suspension. They said the ride was bumpy, which is shocking because camels walk on sand across giant dunes. They asked the handler if there were premium camels with smoother rides, like requesting a luxury trim model with heated seats. The handler explained that camels move the way camels move. The tourist responded, "Well, they could at least make an effort. Yes, camels should download a firmware update to improve stability. I'm sure evolution is thrilled to hear the feedback." 41. Someone visiting a famous waterfall in South America complained that their shoes got wet. They stood next to a roaring torrent of water, mist spraying in every direction, and acted surprised when water touched them. They accused the trail designers of poor planning and asked why the waterfall couldn't be redirected a little. Redirected, as in gently nudged to stop inconveniencing their sneakers. Maybe just turn off gravity for an hour. They stomped away, dripping, muttering that nature didn't respect personal boundaries, which might be the most unintentionally profound complaint of all time. 42. A man at a geothermal spring complained that the water was uncomfortably warm, which is like ordering a pizza and complaining it's too pizza-like. He dipped one toe in, recoiled dramatically, and declared, "This is misleading advertising." The guide explained geothermal heat comes from volcanic activity beneath the Earth's crust. He said, "Well, someone should tell it to calm down. He then suggested adding ice to balance the temperature, as if the Earth were an over-enthusiastic bartender. The spring, meanwhile, continued existing, blissfully unaware of his thermostat preferences. 43. A woman on a boat tour complained that the ocean moved too much. She said waves were unpredictable and made the experience unstable, as though the sea was deliberately messing with her equilibrium. She suggested the captain take the stiller route, which is adorable because that does not exist. When told the movement was caused by wind and tides, she said, "Well, can't you turn them off?" The captain stared at her like he'd just witnessed rock-bottom human comprehension. She later referred to the trip as a hostile aquatic environment, which honestly sounds like the title of an unhinged documentary. 44. At a wildlife refuge, a tourist complained that the birds didn't sing on cue. They recorded several minutes of silence, then marched to the staff to show proof of poor performance. They said they expected the birds to be more musical, referencing animated films and theme park parades. The ranger explained that birds sing when they want, not when people demand. The tourist waved this away, responding, "Well, someone should train them. This is a sanctuary." Yes, a sanctuary. Not a Broadway audition. The birds continued living their best lives, blissfully ignoring the world's worst talent judge. 45. On a mountain overlook, a man complained the clouds blocked the view. He pointed at the sky with the confidence of someone issuing a parking violation. He asked if the clouds could move out of the way for a few minutes. The guide explained that weather patterns can't be scheduled. The man sighed dramatically and said, "Then what's the point of coming here?" Which is a question that answers itself. He demanded a refund because the sky hid the mountains, like the atmosphere was colluding against him. I've never seen a man so personally offended by vapor. 46. A tourist at a tropical island complained that the beach had too much sand. They said it was everywhere, which is correct, because again, it's a beach. They accused the resort of not managing the spread, as if sand migration could be policed with cones and caution tape. When staff explained that sand naturally shifts with waves and wind, the tourist replied, "Well, someone should vacuum it." Yes, vacuum. The beach. With what? A Roomba the size of a tractor? Even the hermit crabs looked like they wanted to file a counter-complaint. 47. Someone visiting a national park complained the trees were too tall and made them feel small. They said the forest was psychologically intimidating, like the trees were silently judging them from above. They asked if the park could trim the tops to a reasonable height, like resizing a haircut that's gotten out of hand. The ranger calmly explained that the trees are protected. The tourist frowned and said, "Well, they shouldn't be taller than people. It's unsettling." Congratulations to that forest for accidentally threatening a grown adult simply by existing. 48. A guest on a snowmobile tour complained that the snow was too cold. They expected warmer snow, which suggests they learned meteorology from a children's coloring book. They said the snow felt unfriendly, because apparently frozen water should make emotional accommodations. When informed snow is frozen by definition, they said, "Well, maybe warm it a little." Yes, let's put a giant space heater above the Arctic. Polar bears would love that. 49. At a world-famous national park, a tourist complained that the sky had too many stars, making it visually overwhelming. They said the night sky should be simpler, ideally with fewer distractions. The guide explained it was one of the darkest sky areas on Earth, known for its incredible stargazing. The tourist responded, "Well, they should turn some off." Turn some stars off. Somewhere, NASA felt a disturbance in the force. 50. A person visiting a coral reef complained that the coral looked too real. They said it was weird and organic looking, and expected something more polished. They asked the guide if the reef had ever considered a redesign, maybe with cleaner lines or less squiggly shapes. The guide explained coral is alive. The tourist shuddered and said, "Well, that's upsetting. Imagine being so committed to minimalism that you want to simplify an entire ecosystem." Even the clownfish looked offended. 51. And finally, the dumbest tourist complaint I've ever heard. Someone, with full sincerity, complained that the moon looked different than it does at home. They believed the moon had regional variations, like fast food menus, and accused the destination of having a lower quality moon experience. They demanded the hotel swap it out for the normal one. I have never heard a sentence that so perfectly encapsulates human arrogance. Someone genuinely thought the celestial body visible from every point on Earth was somehow defective because they flew somewhere else. If cosmic disappointment ever needs a mascot, this is it. The universal mic drop of tourist stupidity. And that, somehow, was the highlight reel of humanity pushing the limits of basic awareness. Drop your own favorite disaster below. Vote for the dumbest one. And if you want more of this chaos, you know exactly what buttons to hit.